welcome listeners to the Partnership Publishing podcast and viewers. We are joined today with our new debut author, Emilie Szasz of the title Bumbles Lou, A Coat of Love. Welcome, Emilie.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time today.
It's my pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. Now, we met quite a while back now, and I remember first reading A Coat of Love by yourself, and just getting that whole goose pimply bumpy moment of just sheer enjoyment. It was a book that was very different. It touched on different topics that we'd not received many submissions about. So I'd like to maybe start today with the blurb, and then kind of ask you a couple of questions about it and how you found the journey and everything. But Bumbles Lou, A Coat of Love. So fitting in can be difficult when you are different, and Ladybird Lou knows this well. She is a ladybird with no spots amongst a school class of confident little critters, but a friendship with a fierce, kind little bumblebee could change everything. A gentle rhyming book that shows the importance of kindness and tolerance whilst expressing the value of standing up for what is right. Now, cue A Coat of Love. Bumbles Lou, let's talk about the book. Maybe introduce us to the characters and the plot, where the idea came from.
Very quickly, just to show you the characters in the book.
Like it. Oh, beautiful.
So the main characters are Bumbles, a bumblebee, little bumblebee. She's a school age but young, and Ladybird Lou. So she's as stated, she's a ladybird. Her name is Lou, and she has no spots, unfortunately. And then there are a whole array of secondary characters, all insects. There's Miriam Moth, Wilbur the worm, Albert the ant. They're all secondary characters, but in some ways just as important to show how people react to different situations.
It's very poignant, actually. Yeah, very, very interesting. And let's just have another quick look at the book, because that is absolutely beautiful. We are so pleased with
happy designers, unbelievable. They did such an amazing job on. I just open one of the pages.
Absolutely.
On bringing my
look at that. That is just incredible.
Bringing the characters to life. It was just really fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything better. If you can see that, sorry, I'm contorting.
No, absolutely, it's so beautiful. For those that can see, obviously you'll see that there's texture there. It's kind of very watercolor based. The colors are just so cozy and warm, and really is like that hug in a book, really. I think Sarah Lee Wills of Happy Designer absolutely has just kind of, we love this page. So for those that can only hear us and cannot see, Emily's now sharing a page, a double page spread of the book, which is just absolutely adorable. It's at the foot of the base of a tree, and they're having a bit of a party.
An old snail telling fables in the corner, and a cricket playing music. They've done an absolutely fantastic job. I cannot say more about them. They really did bring the characters to life, in a way that I never imagined.
No, and we absolutely love working with them. So you mentioned there obviously about your characters. Where did the inspiration come from? Because obviously then you had to translate that to working with obviously Sarah and Happy Designer, to kind of convey that, and then they then bring it to life for you. So how was that?
So, well, the inspiration is definitely from my own children. I have two daughters, and I, even the way they look is very much based on my children. And I actually ended up sending photos of my children to Happy Designer, so they could have an idea of what they look like, because that was a very clear image in my head. Mainly because this book was never intended to be published. It was for my daughters, mainly my eldest daughter's birthday. and so I wanted them to recognize themselves in it.
Yeah.
And I also wanted there to be some appreciation of the fact that they had shown a lot of kindness and behavior that I value and admire in many ways during that school year. And I wanted to say to them, you know, this is fantastic, and I really, you know, there's something to build on. And you know, there are lots of inspirations to the book. That was one of them. And then I'm sure we'll discuss at a later stage, but events at the time when I wrote the book were very tense. It was during the Black Lives Matter and George Floyd murder, and I think that was another point, that writing this book about tolerance and kindness and what we can do on a small level, what every child can do to make, you know, the world a better place, but also to empower them to do something, to feel like they're doing something about something that is so beyond their reach and so beyond, you know, concepts they should know, and tragedies they should be open to and exposed to. I think you know, that was another reason. So it's another inspiration behind that. But I mean, I have to say, Happy Designers were incredible, because obviously I had an image in my head, and we deviated a few times from that in a very positive way, in a way that you know, wow, yes, I didn't think of that, but that's amazing. Now I can't think of the character looking any other way. Which I think was definitely one of Sarah's strengths.
100%. Letting you look at things differently, because I feel as a writer, and that's how we like to kind of mentor and transition writers to author, and working with your text, you can be quite close to it, but also then as publishers, we've got to think, well, what do the readers, you know, want, and how will this convey your message to the best of its ability? And sometimes as writers, we're so close to a project, and obviously especially when it's been led by very personal influences, it's then opening that world up, because when there is such potential in text, in a manuscript, and you can see it, you know that it's achievable. And absolutely, so strength in kind of eking that out in that illustration process is definitely a strength. And now we have that beautiful book of A Coat of Love with your characters Bumbles and Lou. It's also so, like, it sticks in your head like Bumbles and Lou, and because of the illustration and the style, it's so significant. It's just so wholesome. We absolutely kind of love as well, I think, just one thing to touch on at this point in the conversation, on the manuscript level, the way you've written Bumbles and Lou, it's very clever. The use of the gentle kind of rhyme throughout the book is just beautiful. So have you had much feedback, or kind of as you've been, it's great to read aloud as well?
I think that's, I've been very lucky in as much as I've only had positive feedback about the rhyming. I know some people really don't like rhymes and rhyming books, and I think, you know, you just wouldn't buy Bumbles and Lou, you wouldn't go there. But even for those people, I think it does lend and tend to reading out loud to a child, or even to another adult if you wish. But in that respect, it was so important for me to make a book that adults wanted to read. You know, I'm a mother. Books are incredibly important to us, and we've got trolleys of them at home, children's books. And you know, for years before my children could read, you know, and the little one is still learning how to read at the moment. You know, I spent ages thinking, oh gosh, she loves this book, but I don't want to read it out loud again. It doesn't flow. It doesn't. And although the story was beautiful, you know, it grates a little bit when you start reading it. And you know, and there's some books that you open and you just think this is a pleasure to read. And I wanted to make it easy for parents or adults to read it and not get too bored of the rhyming. And for it not to jar too much. So I think if it flows off the tongue, you're more likely to pick it up and read it.
Absolutely. And also I feel that with Bumbles and Lou, A Coat of Love, because it is a picture book, yes, and it is obviously rhyming and verse, and it's not very thick, but there is story there. And so you feel that even as a a parent or a guardian, like you're maybe getting something new from the story each time you read it. I definitely noticed that even with the illustrations, you can kind of look at that a little bit deeper because of the detailing that's there. But it is it's a very fun book to read aloud. And yeah, there's definitely deep story there. There's more meaning. There's definitely.
They're different levels, definitely. Dropped, yeah. There are definitely different levels. I think the levels. I'm, you know, we've my daughters have got very young cousins. My siblings have got very young children, babies and 3-year-old, and so we've got the whole range of children to sort of test it out on, if you like. And actually, it works very well being read out loud and being read by an older child as well. And it is understood on different levels. You know, you can just keep it at the superficial level, which I think is a scenario that happens quite often in schools. You know, there are children, you know, namely one of my children, who find it very difficult to, maybe not difficult to make friends, but difficult to be part of a bigger group and insert themselves comfortably. And you know, I think the beauty of it is saying that everybody is different, and that is okay. And I'm not of the school of thought that believe that you shouldn't see differences. I think you should. I think differences are important. Their differences are good to point out to children in a sympathetic and kind way, and encourage them to embrace the differences. You know, if a child wants to play one game and another child really doesn't want to, that is also okay. It is okay for a child not to be the life of the party and soul of the party, and to be a bit quieter. And that was part of this process. I have one child that is the life and soul of the party and doesn't stop talking and shouting and screaming and singing, and you know, that's her personality. And I have another child who's an observer. She likes to sit and observe, and she likes to understand people before she starts a conversation. And both are valid, and both are equally as wonderful. And that is what we need to be teaching our children, that nobody is the same. And that is a beautiful thing. That is something that society has to value. And that again is on so many levels. You know, we talk about ethnicity and religion and size and, you know, abilities and opinions. You know, we all have strong opinions, and even opinions that are, you know, opposed to yours, that you might not agree with at all. The importance of being able to sit down and, you know, and discuss that and apologize. And that's very much featured in the book, that, you know, you need to be able to say, I'm sorry that I shamed you, or I'm sorry that I shouted at you, or I'm sorry that I said you were wrong. You're not wrong, you just have a different opinion to me. And you know, we all find that hard as adults. I think we find that very hard. I find that tremendously hard. It's a running joke between my husband and I that I can never apologize. It's something I've had to work at very hard since we've been together. And you know, you have to be able to say, I am not always right, and I am, you know, I'm not infallible, and I get things wrong. And I think it's important that children hear that.
Like you
model it.
Well said. I do feel that it's one of the most important lessons that we can deliver, and doing that in a mindful way, through story, through rhyme, through verse, through entertainment methods like reading with children, or them to even pick up the book themselves, you know, and see themselves in a book, or see that scenario, you know, and be able to have that relatability factor, which this book definitely gives, but through the joy of obviously critters and animals and that beautiful setting. I think that is what makes Bumbles and Lou that kind of perfect book for this reason. Your book shows the importance of kindness and tolerance, whilst expressing the value of standing up for what is right. Have you had many moments, I guess, in your life? And if so, what would you say that they were?
I laugh, because if my mother was standing next to me right now, she would grimace and laugh herself. I was a nightmare child because I was so mouthy about everything. And I think that very much came from, you know, from my upbringing. My mother, it's the little things. My mother would, if I was having a birthday party, for instance, I was never allowed to just invite one or two friends. It had to be either nobody or the whole class.
Yeah.
I think it was, and it was very frustrating because, sometimes you just want to have your best friend but she would sit down and she would explain to me, just understand and think how those children would feel if, an invite is passed around to 5 people and they don't receive them, the others don't receive them. And how would that make you feel? And, I was crushed when that did happen to me, because it did happen to me at school. I would be, one of 10 people, 5 people not invited, and the rest of the class would be invited. And, I think that, it comes from a very early age, the ability to understand, being empathetic, the ability to understand and try and put yourself in people's shoes and understand how people feel. And then when you see it going wrong, or you see something, not necessarily bad, but not how you would imagine should happen. I think the ability to say something. What I didn't get right was that I think as a child it became very, this is my opinion, and my opinion is what counts. I think that's also something to teach your children, that you have to stand back a little bit, and your opinions are not always right. But I think where empathy and children's feelings are concerned, and adults' feelings are concerned, I think we have to be more aware of our words and how words have impact. Definitely as a child, there are a few incidents. I had a school friend as a teenager who had recovered from cancer and was very keen that the class don't know. He was a very good friend of mine, and he told me about it, and I had not told anybody else. And obviously all the teachers knew. And he was talking in class, and one of the teachers blurted it out in front of the whole class. And my instant reaction was to say to the teacher, how could you do that? He didn't want anyone else to know. But at the same time, which I did, but at the same time, I had my mother's voice in my head: do not talk back to teachers. So it's a very different situation, because I was brought up very much, teachers are right, you listen to teachers, you behave. But at the same time, here was a woman who was clearly doing the wrong thing, and doing it to hurt him, because she perceived him not to be listening to her. And so it was almost pulling rank and being authoritarian and crushing him.
What's right and wrong. The compass.
Yeah, exactly. And I came home and I got told off for bad mouth, talking back to teacher, but I also got praised for standing up for him. And many incidents. And I was so proud recently of my eldest daughter, who came out of school, and there was a small child who was friends with her, whose birthday it had been, and was holding this beautiful unicorn balloon. And one of their other friends, who has a tendency to be quite cruel, and I think often that's because of what's going on personally with them at home, walked straight up to her in front of all the parents, because it was going home time, and said, "Your balloon is ugly, just like you." And my daughter, without even thinking about it, didn't make a scene, but just said very loudly, "The balloon is beautiful, and so are you." And she didn't confront anybody, because she's not a person that confronts. She didn't get into a fight with anybody, but she just made it known there and then that opinion, whilst valid in that person's head, was not what everyone else thought. And I think, I got a text message later on from the father of the child who was holding the balloon to say, you have no idea what those few seconds meant to my daughter. And sitting and explaining to my daughter that your words have impact, and those words stopped your friend from crying, stopped her thinking about, asking those awful questions. Am I ugly? Is that person true? Is my balloon ugly? Which then starts the ball rolling with all these questions about self-worth and, beauty in the eyes of other people. And, for boys and for girls, but I think especially for girls, is such an issue we do not want to be getting into at such a young age. And we don't want people putting a value judgment on themselves, at such a young age. And that was such a proud moment for me. I think, for all the criticism I may have about myself, my parenting, I sat down for the first time in years and said to myself, I must have been doing something right for her to take that on board. And there are many little incidents like that. And I think it is little things. We have to know that it is little things that can make the biggest difference.
100%. And this is it. And I guess the biggest purpose of you even physically having the discipline and sitting down and writing the story, and as it flowed from you initially, it's that what you initially thought was such a small thing, you know, naturally for your family, you know, to kind of have and then share this story with and kind of influence that positivity and, like you said, that tolerance, that kindness, and that different way of thinking, and that empathy. What Bumbles and Lou are now able to do, if you like, is kind of share that with the world. And, you know, this book's out there, and hopefully, yeah, I mean, that story is absolutely beautiful with your daughter. You are beautiful, and so is your Baloo. I mean, that is just, for her to have that instant reaction, and how, you know, we can really, I guess, positively influence children with the words that, you know, they can read and see. And it might be classed as such a small thing, but actually it's things like this that can make all the difference. And it's our purpose-led work. I mean, it's so great. So just quickly, before we kind of wrap this up, so I guess if you were to write a sequel or another book, do you have influence for what it would be about? You've obviously got a strong opinion, you've got, you know, a clear directive and things that you'd like to say and do and help inspire. Do you have kind of any further Bumbles and Lou kind of adventures?
I definitely do. And I think, you know, in the pipeline, you know, I think staying on the theme of, you know, how children can be empowered to do better, feel better about themselves and make others feel better, I think is the line that I would love to carry on with. I think we live in a world that is so difficult for children. You know, on the one hand, they're told that they have to grow up fast. On the other hand, don't grow up too fast. And I thought, you know, in our particular case, that the George Floyd case just changed our world. Because, you know, there is my child who, you know, thinks that the most important thing is her dolls and, you know, what necklace she wears to a party or what pen she writes with at school. And she was asking me questions that she was hearing things on the news about, you know, a black man killed by police. And she didn't understand that, because why would a man be killed by people she's always been told would do good and she should go to if there was trouble? And so, you know, writing something that empowers children to do something on their level that leads to bigger changes in society is what I would love to carry on doing. You know, I always wrote for fun, but it was always for me to soothe my own soul and to, you know, it was pre-children. And funny enough, so before I had children, I was never a lover of babies, or I was never one of these people who you know, hankered after motherhood or anything like that. But I think that I always wrote children's stories. And looking back on it, I almost didn't realize they were children's stories. And I think it's partly because I had such great mentorship from my mother. She definitely is a person who, you know, she's a go-getter, but she teaches you how to behave well in those circumstances, that you should never crush anybody to get to the top, because, you know, on your way down, you're going to be seeing them again. So you know, you should, it's not the way the world functions if you want a good world for future generations. And flipping that on its side to the George Floyd case, you know, my daughter felt completely disempowered and frightened and devastated for this scenario, as thousands and millions of people did, in a world where, you know, her best friend is black and members of our family are mixed race, and it's just not about race. Also, you know, it's about religion and abilities and everything we talked about before, and looks. And, you know, she felt, you know, something that literally kept her up at night. And it's very anxiety provoking in children who are, you know, who want to do something and who don't really understand how to make sense of the world. So for me, writing these books and, you know, possible sequel is about giving them the tools and saying, you know, if you see a child at school that's struggling, or if you see somebody who, you know, is having a hard time, these are the things you can do to make them feel better.
Yeah.
And you know what? Selfishly making them feel better will make you feel better as well.
Yeah.
And that can be, excuse me, that can be passed on, you know, and that can be passed on to your colleagues and your friends and even teachers and even parents. And, you know, watching my child behave so beautifully to another child just made me think, actually, how do I speak to my child?
Yeah.
What impacts do my words, what impact do my words have on my children?
It's how
Whilst
we're
I'm
all
screaming, shouting, and to get their shoes on in the morning, you
and
know? Which we all do. I think, you know, we've got to also be realistic about it.
real, isn't it? Real life, and we're all human. And I think you've just got such a strong voice. It honestly is the most beautiful book. And I honestly feel that, yeah, your refreshing tone, your voice, everything that you stand for, naturally, it's so relatable. If you're listening or watching this and you really cannot wait to kind of find out more and obviously join Emilie on her journey, writing journey, authorship journey, please do connect with Emilie, because I think there needs to be more of this, and we need to kind of, yeah, build that community. There's so many out of us there that, you know, we all feel the same way. And obviously the way we can connect with you as your new author and this title and book, it is the best way to do that. So where can people find you? I know, yeah.
I'm actually on Instagram. I'm looking at my notes because I don't know my handle. So it's Emilie_the_author, but Emilie is Emilie. So Emilie Emilie_the_author.
Yeah.
Instagram. But I do have a website, which is a little easier, and it's www.bumblesandlou.com.
Perfect.
And you can order the book through there, and you can email me and just have a chat. And yeah. So
it's that safe space. You're on socials, you're on the web. If anyone wants to contact Emilie via ourselves as well, just go to partnershippublishing.co.uk or magicmousebooks.com, and we're there. And yeah, safe space for conversation. Any feedback or comments that you have about the book, we'd love to hear from you. Any reviews, and we look forward to, yeah, hopefully hearing from you all very soon. We hope you enjoyed this conversation with Emilie. Thank you ever so much for your time, Emilie.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we will see you all again. Well, speak to you and see you all again soon. Thanks ever so much. Take care for now. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.